Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Friday, January 17th edition of the Daily Pulse. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the Wellpoint Studios and joined by my guest host for today, Jomarie Buckley is here with us from the town of Tewksbury, very active in the town of Tewksbury, doing some Inside Tewksbury podcasting for us, but well-versed and well-learned.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, you spend most of your working days here in Lowell, right? At the courthouse?
Lowell, Cambridge. Yeah, I'm all over.
Oh, Lowell is much more fun than Cambridge.
It is.
I don't care what Kelly Ayotte says.
Well, yes, we'll get to that.
We're going to get to Kelly Ayotte, but Tewksbury, holy smokes, talk about exciting political news going on in your town. Lots of it. Double-barreled action on the select board. It's going to set up a fun spring election,
It's going to absolutely set up a fun spring election. I hope Tewksbury citizens pay attention, because we are on the cusp. So the two incumbents, the two incumbents on the select board, Jane Wellman and Mark Ratman. Jane Wellman has announced she's stepping down effective, I think, next week. Mark Ratman announced at the January 7th, whatever the select board meeting was that week, that he's not running for re-election, citing health issues, but we can talk about that a little bit more. And so basically both incumbents are not seeking re-election. There's already 3 people who have pulled papers for those 2 seats. And we have a new town manager. We have the possibility of new leadership on the select board, a change kind of in the posture of the select board. And the assistant town manager is retiring at the end of the year. So there's huge transitions happening in Tewksbury over this next year.
Might as well change the name of the town. There's so much change.
Correct. Yep. Don't touch the Redmond, though.
Leave the Redmond
Don't touch the Redmond. We don't have to be Tewksbury, but we're going to
delve into all of those in some detail. Just quickly, let me say thank you to our friends at Wellpoint, I should say. We're broadcasting from the Wellpoint Studios. Wellpoint is the only health plan offering health care benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At Wellpoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thank you as well to our friend Real Estate Ray Booten, sponsor of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse. If you're looking to buy or sell a home or a commercial property in Massachusetts or New Hampshire, or if you want to have such property appraised in either state, Real Estate Ray Booten is your man. realestaterayBooten.com is the web address. Thank you to Ray. Thank you to our friends at Wellpoint, and we'll thank the rest of our Inside Lowell podcast sponsors. But back to Jomarie. All right, so Lowell Sun reported it this week that Jane Wellman, who's been kind of active in town politics since 2009 now, between the school committee and whatnot.
She was town moderator briefly as well. Yeah, she's had a lot of different roles. Very involved in the Tewksbury Democratic Committee. Was for a while really involved in 100 People Who Care, which was a nonprofit in Tewksbury that has since disbanded. To her credit, I think it's unfortunate that she couldn't do the rest of her term, because I think there's a super majority now on that board for the next few months that I think if I were James Mackey, I'd be concerned about. I had to step down in Wilmington because of personal stuff going on before my term ended. I totally get it. I'm very happy for her. Like all of the changes that are going on that are warranting it are positive changes for her. So it's great. Personally for the town, it stinks because we now have a 4-person board with a 3-person kind of voting block that's been the clear voting block for the past year, that now have the next few months to really kind of be in control of things. And, just so people understand, for example, we have 2 vacant schools that there was a reuse committee, there was a town survey, and now it seems like those 2 vacant schools are going to be housing, which I don't think were considerations that the town had really supported. And we have a 3-person block on the select board that can just basically do whatever they want for until April.
Am I sensing that you're not a fan of this 3-person block?
So let's get into it. We're gonna rip the Band-Aid. Like I said to you, Teddy.
Let's go. Let's make some enemies. Everyone thinks
I already have them.
Sweet, nice, radio
I am not the good guy anymore. So Mark Ratman, as people know, I ran against him in 2022. For whatever reason, we are political opponents, even though we've never had a real conversation with each other in our lives. He announced at the January 7th that he's not running for re-election. And he's one of the incumbents. He has basically been, for all intents and purposes, he's been the chair for the last year. And he's been the scriptwriter for him, Pat Holland, and Eric Ryder. They vote as a block. They speak as a block, quite frankly. If you watch the meetings, you can see who got what speaking points in their discussions prior to the meetings. And he's stepping down. And I don't necessarily agree with some of the things that, like for example, I went to the December select board meeting where they were going to call out the state hospital. And as you know, the state hospital is near and dear to me. I'm on the board of trustees there. I think they're phenomenal in so many ways, and they deserve so much credit. And he's referring to the patients as prisoners. It's unacceptable, and it's a mindset that needs to change. And hopefully, with him not returning to the select board, it's a mindset that can start to evolve. I did think it was interesting that he was banging the table, demanding the governor come and see the state hospital. Just spoiler alert, it's January 17th. The governor still hasn't made any intent of coming to that hospital.
She hasn't responded.
So the select board doesn't have the power to get her there either. The board of trustees hasn't been able to get her there. The local politicians, the state reps, I know Dave Robertson has been trying to get her there. So the select board, shocker of all shockers, is also not able to demand the governor show up when they want her to show up.
She's a little busy.
She is.
Perhaps turn it into a migrant center, and she'll call up and send a few $1 million.
So that when we were talking before we went on, Teddy, I said to you, I also want people to understand. I don't expect the common everyday Tewksbury citizen to be a complete political junkie. I don't expect the common everyday Tewksbury citizen to really take the time to figure out how the presidential election results is going to impact Tewksbury directly, right? Because most people would think local politics is local, and we don't have to worry about local politics, state politics, and federal politics kind of interacting. But the reality is they do, as we know, right?
So much of the funding for the state and our communities comes from Washington, D.C. I don't think people understand that. I think I've had a theory that that's why you have such low voter turnout in municipal elections, because I think the voters have figured out everything I depend on day to day comes from D.C. or some higher level, not necessarily, and we just kind of take for granted our trash will get picked up and our street lights will be on.
Right. Exactly. And I think what we're going to start learning in this next cycle, the presidential cycle coming upon us in the next week or two, is how it can directly impact us. And the example that I kind of gave you off the air that I think is important for people to understand is, Trump's agenda is to do a lot of social services cuts, a lot of, public health and public welfare cuts, because he's a Republican, so I'm not saying this isn't an anti-Trump statement in any sense of the word. The Republican Party notoriously says people should kind of take care of themselves. It's not the government's job to kind of get into people's houses to try to fix problems. And that's what we're going to see, heavily, is he's really focused on the business end of the house, which we all knew was going to happen, and that's what we can expect. How that impacts Tewksbury is we know, the local police over the last, I would say, it's become really prevalent since kind of the pandemic and Black Lives Matter, that the local police municipalities try to have a social worker on staff, right? And we have evidence of that being helpful. We have evidence of that de-escalating so that something that was a wellness check doesn't turn into a criminal charge, right? And I can give you more specifics if you want, because I know I'm speaking kind of in generalizations, but the reality is we as a municipality, and we being Tewksbury, Wilmington, a lot of the municipalities in Massachusetts over the last 5 years or so have seen the benefit of, if you have a social worker or some type of clinician on staff of a police department, it will help create, instead of something turning into an assault and battery, it can be de-escalated and turn into getting that person tapped into help, right?
You just hired a new one, I believe, recently, and then you're also part of this collaborative with Drake It and a couple of other communities where you share another person in that role, right? And
part of the cuts, the federal cuts through DMH, are going to be that those services will be lost. And that's going to be a hit to Tewksbury. Tewksbury police are very active on social media, so we are lucky enough to know kind of what they're doing regularly when they're called out to the state hospital, when they're called out to other calls. They're really good about putting out kind of alerts if there's someone in danger for themselves. If someone is not necessarily just kind of community danger, it's if someone has gone, I think like 2 weeks ago, it was an adult autistic person who was out in the cold, and they just wanted to have people be on the lookout to get that person safely off the streets. Those types, we're lucky to have that, but they're about to lose some of the services that will help help protect those people and help facilitate that not being part of the criminal justice system.
Do we know, have any such cuts been announced? Has anything been put forward that makes you say that, or are you just kind of going based on what historically has been the case?
Kind of based on the projected budgets, from what I understand, and again, it's limited knowledge, but limited information from kind of social media, but it's also in the conversations with kind of the state hospital and the concerns of the different agencies that are tenants on the state hospital property and the cuts that they're anticipating. I think the writing's on the wall that pretty soon after Trump is actually in office, we're going to see changes to the funding for those services.
The funding for these positions comes from
ultimately
DC,
from the federal.
It's
DMH is ultimately, there's a lot of federal funding for a lot of social service components, for a lot of substance abuse treatment, and people don't seem to understand that Governor Healey can only do so much as governor. There are state funds for some of this, but a lot of it comes through the state from the federal government, and that's about to change. And I think that's going to hit home because we have Tewksbury State Hospital, and because we're a municipality that has, have the social work component in our force right now.
Right. So with that, all that as a backdrop, and the two incumbents who are going to be on the ballot.
Correct.
Is it April? Is that?
Yes, I think it's like April 3rd or 4th, whatever the first weekend of April is.
Okay. You mentioned already 3 people have drawn paperwork.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the field? Who are these 3?
All right, let's roll up our sleeves, Teddy. Again, I'm going to make some friends and I'm going to make some enemies.
Buckley one of them?
No, Jomarie Buckley. I told you this, and I'm not saying this in any type of humble brag way.
Your way.
No, I don't. I would be in the same position I was in a year ago, and it would be a difficult win because the blocks have already picked their candidates, right? And I'll put it all out there. So we have, I think her first name is Lindsay Dunlevy, who I have never met in person. Again, full disclosure, I've never had a conversation with her. On paper, I hope she wins. She seems to be the most appropriate for the position. She's a professional. She comes from a big family in town. I think her grandmother was the first female Tewksbury Select Board member, as well as the first female Select Board chair in Tewksbury. So she kind of has that great history. And I want to say she's a CPA. She has a professional role that I think is going to be important because municipal finance is going to be huge in this next cycle. We're going to need to be looking at things like that. So on paper, she's my number 1 pick.
And you said Lindsay
Dunlevy.
Okay.
Yeah. I know her last name is Dunlevy. I think her first name is Lindsay. My husband's going to kill me because I asked him this morning what her name was so I wouldn't forget. And then I clearly just forgot. Yes. Ryan Lloyd is the second person who's pulled papers, heavily involved in the Tewksbury Democratic Committee. Very nice guy, out of his realm on the select board, but I think he could be a good worker bee. So he would be my second. Out of the 3 that have pulled papers, those are the 2 I would be saying please vote for them. He is on the housing authority. He's a veteran. He has a good foundation of kind of basic knowledge. When I say out of his realm, I just don't know if he necessarily can take an issue and analyze it quickly. But I also think he has enough people kind of in his camp that are going to help him figure that out. So he would be my second vote. The third one, and this is the one where, again, I love my enemies, is Tom Bali. And he ran against me last year. And I'm not speaking out of spite that neither one of us won. My concerns with Tom are multiple. He's a very nice guy. Met him a couple of times. Very nice guy. Know he's a longtime resident, but just Google him. His business in the 90s had an OSHA violation that led to a death that he ultimately was responsible for. If you watch the debate from last year, I don't think he even understood some of the concepts being asked of him. And he was clearly just part of the Kratman camp. He was told to run with Eric Ryder. They not so subtly were told, we're telling the Tewksbury voters, vote for them together. You have to vote for them together as a block, which I think got him a lot more votes than he would have gotten otherwise. He didn't prevail. I think it would be a disaster if he wins, because I think then we would be looking at, we'd have the 3-person block on the select board without the agenda writer as prevalent. I think Mark Kratman, wherever he might be at that time, would still be the puppet master of Pat Holland, Eric Ryder, and Tom Bali, and we can't have that anymore.
Shouldn't hold back.
I mean,
just kind of
and
put
again,
it out there.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, I can only guess what his issues with me might be. I think one of them is that I say things like this, and I'm not really super concerned about his opinion of me. I think he's upset that I supported an opponent of his when he ran for state rep. But I think you have to get your own house in order. Like the bottom line for any type of political career is you get your own house in order first before you put yourself out into the world. And when you've had 5 years, the town crier just did an article within this last month that he's on year 5 of a pending third OUI trial that we're still waiting to hear. I mean, that's just a liability the town never should have accepted. And quite honestly, it's the reason why I think Tewksbury, as well as other towns, need to look at a code of ethics for the select board, because that's a distraction. Like when I was going through my divorce, it was a very personal situation. It didn't really involve the town at all. But when I saw that that was going to start impacting the town, because I was on the select board and there was kind of this underlying grumbling of, does she even still live in Wilmington? I said, enough is enough. I'm going to be there for my kids. I'm going to be there, you know, to deal with my life, because the town doesn't need my personal life as their distraction. And shame on him that he hasn't had that same realization in the last 5 years.
Did he indicate at that board meeting, you said January 7th, did he indicate why?
Health reasons.
Health reasons.
Yeah,
okay.
He did have some type of health situation.
By the way, we have not seen this reported anywhere. You mentioned
no, it was on the select board. Yeah, it was on.
And
he said it at the end of the meeting.
Searching, looking on social media.
It hasn't been covered, and I don't know if it hasn't been covered because they just did the town crier just did the article on kind of what's going on with his trial. That 5 years later, we're still waiting for it just got kicked again from December to February. But he's announced it. I've been told it by multiple people. I don't think I'm making this up. It was at the end of the select board meeting that he said for health reasons he was temporarily not running again, that he'd be back someday. And, you know, again, I don't want to throw shade on people that make those decisions because of what's going on in their personal life. I just don't. I question whether the health reasons is finally that because of the town crier article, the writing is on the wall that this trial is inevitably happening this year. And I appreciate that he didn't try to campaign, win probably, and then try to be a select board member from jail. I don't think anyone wants to try to figure out how that would have worked.
All right, but he did say that he would come back at some point.
At some point, once his health issues were resolved. Okay. And he did have some type of health issue a year ago that, you know, and the town crier article kind of pointed out that he was taking time off from work, couldn't come to select board meetings in person, but still managed to campaign for Buckley and Ryder, you know, needed a cane to walk, but didn't need a cane to hold signs, those types of things, which are questionable behaviors. But again, I don't want to, you know, if he has legitimate health issues that he needs to focus on, I appreciate the fact that he's making that decision to get his own house in order before he kind of brought Tewksbury through that.
And to be clear, 𝐸𝐞 has this funny thing when he writes, he says, so-and-so stepped down for health reasons. The voters got sick of him or her.
No.
You said
he would have won again.
He would win.
He would win again.
So it is not that the voters are sick of him. He would win regardless of the situation.
Teddy, it is baffling to me as an adult, as someone who, you know, you kind of were saying how educated I am. I don't think that I'm, you know, more educated than the common person. But the reality is I don't understand why the town of Tewksbury doesn't think it deserves better. But he has a lock. And for whatever reason, he keeps getting in, even though he has all these issues that kind of surround him that could be liabilities to the town. He's involved in a lot of things. One of my favorite descriptions of him is that he's a mile long and an inch deep, because he's involved in a lot of things, but doesn't really see through to the completion any of them. But we kind of forgive him for that, it seems, like because he shows up at the parades and he shows up at the different activities. It's been accepted. And he has. I think if he pulled papers, he would win, even with this pending trial. Even if he were convicted prior to Election Day, I would be 100% or 90% confident he would still somehow win.
So,
which is amazing to me.
Yesterday, I had the state auditor, Diana 𝐷𝐸𝐸 on, and she just does not hold back ever, never has. You remind me very much of her.
There you go.
If you're gonna make enemies, go
for it. So, it is what it is.
You say what you think.
Right.
You should be sitting in this chair more often.
Well, we'll see. I mean, one of the things I have to say, I've told you this off the air. We've had many conversations about this. I am so proud to be Jomarie Buckley. My husband is an amazing man on so many levels. And one of the things that he has taught me, and he actually reminded me of it again this morning when he was saying, you know, what are you talking about today and things like that.
Did he tell you not to get yourself in trouble?
No. He would go get into more trouble. No, that's why I love being Jomarie Buckley, is because he's really taught me, like, what are you so afraid of speaking your mind? What's the play out the scenario of you say the truth. As long as it's the truth and you really believe it, who are you apologizing to? Why are you not, why are you holding back? And I really appreciate that, because that is a newer mindset, because I think we're all kind of raised and kind of, as you go through life, that you kind of have to be nice. And if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But the reality is, you're asking me my opinion. And I think this is an important thing for our town. I'm really concerned with what this election could possibly do over the next year for our town. Because if we have that block still in place, I have a lot of concerns. There's too much transition happening in Tewksbury right now to let one person make all of those decisions.
All right, we're going to focus a little bit on that transition. Jomarie Buckley is joining us here in the Well Point Studios. Want to quickly thank our sponsors, of course, Real Estate Ray Booten, sponsor of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse. He's a licensed real estate agent in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, a certified appraiser in both states as well. Find him online at realestaterayBooten.com. Of course, we're coming to you from the Well Point Studios at Well Point. Your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that feels like home. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to generations of families since 1925, 100 years. Our newest sponsor here at Inside Lowell, the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in Greater Lowell through impactful strategic philanthropy. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on since 1982, and by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City. Article just posted online, InsideLowell.com, about the Pirates' new quarterback this year. Had some run with the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL just a couple of years ago, and he's been a USFL star. Check it out, InsideLowell.com. We continue with our discussion. Jomarie Buckley from Tewksbury Together, and you'll be hosting some Inside Tewksbury podcasts here. Maybe we'll do a debate with these these candidates that you talk about.
That would be amazing if I moderated a debate with them. Forget about it. I would love it. Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. Let's invite them all to come on. Once we know how many there are. You said there's three right now. When you got 2 open seats, my hunch is you're going to start to get 4, maybe 5
well, and that's,
in that race.
Honestly,
right?
When people were asking me if I would consider running again, one of my concerns was I pull papers. I feel like I'm immediately pulling votes away from Lindsay, and that's not my intention. I really want, if those 3 are the 3 that are going to be who are on the ballot, I don't want to take away from her votes, and that would be my concern. Is I don't want to split that vote for her, because again, just on paper, she seems like the most professional and the one that's gonna fit in the best. If that means I'm not, I guess I shouldn't say that, because then I have to be unbiased if I'm a moderator, allegedly, right?
Yes.
So sorry.
we may have to have
maybe we'll have someone else be the moderator. Yeah.
But let's talk about how this affects the new town manager, because he's still on his what should be his honeymoon period.
No.
But so you're going to have one select person is already stepping down. I think she said this week.
I think
in
the
the
17th.
article. Okay, so that's
today.
That would be today.
Yeah.
Would be her last day. Kratman's going to finish his term, but come the spring, there will be 2 of the 5 members will be new.
Correct.
That's a lot of change. Town manager, what, less than 6 months he's been
October,
there? October, 4 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you say the assistant town manager
He's
is
retiring at the end of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So...
And the 3 select board members that remain, one was Eric Ryder, who just got elected last year for the first time. One is Pat Holland, who's the chair, who's only been on, I think, for 2 or 3 years. And then James Mackey, who's been on, I want to say this was his 3rd cycle. He just ran last year and won. So he's the most senior. He's the youngest one on the select board, but he would be the most tenured select board member. So we're losing kind of that. And again, Jane, I think we're losing a lot of the experience that, and kind of work that she's put into it when she leaves. So I want to give her credit for that. And I don't want to lump her in with Mark. And that, Mark, we're losing kind of the years on the board. And it's going to be a newer board. Either way, no matter who wins, it's going to be a really young board for John to have to deal with.
So is it going to be a new town? Look, change, I like change.
Yeah.
Change can often be good, but, Tewksbury's been generally regarded as a very well-run town. Every community has its little political squabbles, you and Mark Brown. That stuff's common.
Small town politics.
For the most part, people don't say, that Tewksbury, what a cesspool of politics, or whatever. It's well run. And I'm not saying it's going to become one now, but you've got, the town manager's still going to be getting his feet wet.
Right.
I mean, it helps that he came from Billerica and had some familiarity, but could we see the town start to move in a different direction, leadership-wise, politically? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I hope it doesn't move too far in any direction, because I think one of the things that makes Tewksbury is that kind of traditional small town feel. And I think people are attracted to Tewksbury because it still has that traditional small town feel. It's a conservative town. It's a working class town. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't see Tewksbury ever trying to turn itself into kind of like an Andover or a Lexington or a Winchester. I think, we're a working class town. My concern is when you have kind of that change of leadership, Richard Montori left the town in really good fiscal setup. And John, I think, has kind of subscribed to that because they worked together previously. It's been I'm on the finance committee in town as well. They both came to the meeting. And one of the things Richard wanted to make sure that we as the finance committee understood is that John kind of understands Richard's process. And it's a process that they utilized in the past when they were together in Billerica. So I think financially, the town is in good shape and there's no immediate concerns that need to be addressed by John. I think he was handed kind of a good setup. I think what's going to happen is this next year or two is really going to determine kind of, is Tewksbury going to turn into kind of with two schools potentially becoming some type of housing with the state hospital? One of the big concerns is always all the land that the state hospital has. At some point, is the state going to be looking at that to utilize in some manner that wouldn't be consistent with what the town has always wanted? We have great open space in town. We want to keep that great open space. The state hospital trail system is phenomenal, and you can do tours of it, and you can go for hikes, and none of us want to see that get lost. And that's, I think, the concern is if we don't have strong leadership that really subscribes to Tewksbury remaining a small town, that's where the overdevelopment and the concern could be.
Is any of this predicated on the MBTA communities?
So, I mean, that was one of the controversies. And I think with Trump now getting into office, again, we don't think of how that can trickle down to so Tewksbury did not submit a plan. We basically said, forget it, to the governor.
But you're going to have to now. The state Supreme Court has ruled. So unless we go to Washington, D.C.
I was going to say, what happens when you appeal from the state Supreme Court? Eventually you get to the federal Supreme Court. That's
a tall ask, though, right? You know this as a lawyer. Right. Courts don't like to step into
they don't. But
battles.
If they have to, I don't know if Massachusetts could prevail. I don't know if the governor could prevail enforcing the MBTA Communities Act upon the communities. I think if Vice President Harris had won, I think this would be a different conversation where I'd be saying Tewksbury needs to get on the ball because there's no out to this. I think, some of the people who are very anti-MBTA communities are hoping that if it does ever get escalated to the federal Supreme Court, it would ultimately be remanded back to the governor to say, you can't do this. Either way, I think we need to have a plan. We had a plan, and that was one of the things that was used against me when I ran last year was that I was supporting the plan, which wasn't true. I was just saying out of the mandate that we've been given, it made the most sense. And I think, it's really going to be like one of the things that we need to be looking at, and one of the things that Trump has already kind of made it clear is he wants to shut down the borders, right? And he's saying undocumented immigrants are not going to have the opportunity to prosper in this country anymore. And we have a governor who's saying, we have an open, come here, and we'll help you figure it out. And that's in conflict.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think
they're all coming here.
Right. And I think at some point we already can't handle what has been handed to us. We already can't handle what already exists in our state. And I think that's really where that's what the next 2 years are going to show us is that going to be, are we going to be able to figure out a way to deal with what we already have? Are we going to have to kind of clean house a little bit, or what's going to happen next? And I think that's really the most interesting thing to speculate about. And I don't know, I can't give you an answer because I think if I had to guess, I think we're going to kind of clean house a little bit because we don't have an infrastructure that supports what already is here. But I'm not sure. And I don't think the federal government's in any way going to help us figure that out other than to clean house.
Yeah. Especially if the governor and attorney general and so on and so forth insist on challenging ICE and deportation.
Right.
these are some of the things that boggle my mind. And there was actually the Lake and Riley Act was officially voted on in the House of Representatives yesterday. It passed the Senate overwhelmingly, passed the House pretty overwhelmingly. But so Lori Trahan, Congresswoman Lori Trahan, actually was a yes vote this time. She was a no vote last week, but those were procedural votes. She actually joined Stephen Lynch of Boston as being the only yes votes for the Lake and Riley Act, which means you commit a crime, a murder, rape, whatever, as an illegal immigrant, and you're going out automatic.
Yeah.
Right? 6 Massachusetts congressmen and women voted no, but we have 9. The 9th is Seth Moulton.
Yeah.
Tewksbury. He didn't vote.
Shocker.
All right. So was he there?
I have no idea. I could have told you.
Did he miss the vote? Was he there and chose not to vote? I have not seen any reporting on this.
I don't know. And as you know, I don't know. And as you know, we've been trying to get him on, if he'll come on Inside Tewksbury or Inside Lowell, just kind of based on what was happening in December with the school component, with the gender and sports.
Which, by the way, he then voted after pissing off every Democrat and liberal in the country with his saying, these boys, biologically born boys, shouldn't be playing against my daughters in school. He turns around and he votes against the effort to say we're not allowing that.
Correct.
Which was,
there's a lot of
what does he do? Did somebody put a gun to his head? Not literally, figuratively.
I think.
What the hell happened to Seth Moulton between November 6th and the last couple of days?
There was a presidential election that occurred, right? I think he probably, if I had to guess, and again, this is just speculation from the armchair, right here. This is no inside information whatsoever. I think he has other aspirations, and I think his camp is now saying we have to really rethink how we're going to be presenting ourselves, because it's one thing to be, Senator Seth Moulton in Massachusetts. I think it's another thing to be Congressman Seth Moulton in D.C., kind of with the landscape as it is looking. And
he's flirted with House leadership aspirations, correct? And he's definitely as the more conservative,
right?
He's on the outside looking in right now. So, and I think, do you think that's part?
Yes, I think.
Is there any going back? Because once he said what he said in November, I'm thinking at this point you dove into the end. You might as well start swimming.
Haven't we learned? If you look at all of political history, you can always go back. You can always change. You can always justify reasons to. And I think we are at the precipice of times that are going to be analyzed for. Like, I think about my grandchildren learning about this world right now. And the political landscape is completely changing in a way that I don't think any of us anticipated. Like, we grew up in a time where you talked about Democrats, you were talking about JFK, right? Your parents would talk about voting for JFK and where they were when they found out he was assassinated.
I grew up a JFK Democrat,
right? And then you had the Ronald Reagan Republicans, right? And that was a different time. It was we are in a completely different political landscape that has never existed before. And I don't think you can say, this is how it's going to play out, because none of us know. It's the wild, wild west in a lot of ways.
All right. We'll keep trying to get Congressman Seth Moulton on here. Kudos to Congresswoman Trahan. I don't want to say it was a courageous vote, because it was a common sense vote, but, looking around at the way the rest of the Massachusetts delegation, in particular, Catherine Clark, who's number 2 in the House leadership, Lori Trahan went against her on that vote. Let's see what kind of fallout that has for her. And, Seth Moulton punting, let's see what kind of fallout that has for him. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Tewksbury State Hospital. Yes. Your organization, Tewksbury Together. That's, the state hospital is really near and dear to you. Yes.
So my last Inside Tewksbury episode was about Tewksbury Together, and we were talking about the winter festival that we were going to be having in December. And I had to say, when you were saying, what are we going to talk about Tewksbury today? What a great event that was. And not to my own horn or the Tewksbury Together's horn. In 6 weeks, we only planned it in about a 6-week time frame. We got some great sponsors to donate items for the Festival of Trees component, the raffle component. The state hospital staff and grounds were unbelievable in all of their help and support and trying to get it up and running. And I think the highlight for me of the day was people coming into the chapel, it's an older building kind of right on the edge of the property, and saying, I haven't been in this building in years. I used to come here when I was a kid and see movies here. They used to have mass here. And to hear the positives, right? Because Tewksbury State Hospital tends to only get press for the negatives and for the concerns. And to kind of hear those people that day say, like, I forgot how great this place is. I forgot how nice this is. It's so nice that the community is able to come in. Really kind of ignited a spark, even more so in me, because, obviously I'm on the state hospital board. I want people to see all the great things that are happening there and not just believe all the negative things. But as a community resource, I think it's been underutilized, and I think it's been underappreciated. And I think one of the projects that's happening right now, kind of as an aside, and I don't want to get too heavy into the minutia, is that the state hospital is tying into the town water and sewer. And most people would say, oh, great, Tewksbury Town Water has a reputation already. Now we're going to throw the state hospital on it. Are we going to have issues? And the reality is that project is actually going to help that area. It's going to help bolster the infrastructure, the water infrastructure, and it's also going to generate revenue, water and sewer revenue to the town. So it's only positives, and it's a collaboration that I think people should see and say, well, those are the types of things that we want to see more of. As Tewksbury Together, I hope we have more events there. I was
going to say, are you committing to another Christmas?
Oh, absolutely.
Lock it in. All you need to do is pick the date, right?
Yeah, the first weekend of December, whatever that is. Okay. It'll be the same weekend.
You're going to monopolize Santa Claus's time again? Like you had him for like 8 hours. He's busy in December. Busy. Can you share him?
Yeah, no, we'll come up with a better schedule so that Santa has.
Let us share him with Lowell and somebody else.
Selfish.
Very selfish of you, Jomarie.
It was. But there's other things that I would like. One of the things that I'm hoping to do this year is explore. There's a superintendent's house on the property. It was actually just used in that Stephen King show, and I'm blank. Again, my husband's going to be like, "What is wrong with you?" They used it to film parts of it, and it's this great old building with so many great details to it that I'm so concerned is just going to get condemned at some point because it's vacant. And so my hope is let's start getting people involved to see if there's grants or whatever to rehab that, and we can use that as a community as well. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I'm hoping cautiously that more and more people are going to see the potential and join me in it.
All right, Tewksbury Together. Check them out. Facebook page.
Yes.
Lots of good stuff happening there. Jomarie Buckley is joining us on the Friday, January 17th edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse. By the way, for folks who might think, well, she's just the Tewksbury person. No.
Yeah.
Can we show off the shirt there? That is your Jack Kerouac.
My Kerouac Society. Yep.
Right?
Yep. He came on the president of the Kerouac Society came on WCAP, gave me the shirt. I rep Lowell all the time wearing the shirt.
I'm impressed that you chose to wear it.
I was going to wear it today. Well, I was going to wear black, and you're always calling me out that I wear black too much.
Because you blend in with the background. The bright colors work better.
New year, new me. So.
If you wear all black, you become like a Greek widow.
That's
we
fine.
Don't want that.
That's fine. That's fine.
I don't want you to be like my yaya.
It's more like an abuela. I lean into the abuela feel more, but that's fine.
All right. Well, let's see if we can get that Lowell out of you a little bit since you're wearing the shirt. New Hampshire Governor Kelly Ayotte, former senator, just elected last November, sworn in January. Kind of her first big news thing since story in the Union Leader that Ayotte and Kelly Ayotte and her Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Ruiz, get behind mandatory jail time for drug dealers. Mm-hmm. Bravo. We're not going to let you out on this. If you're dealing drugs, if you're dealing poison, fentanyl, we're, not going to.
Not a novel thought.
You're not coming back on the streets. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And then I can't read the article because the chief Greek won't pay for the Union Leader. I pay for the Lowell Sun. I ain't paying for the Union Leader. Yeah. But she went and put it on her Facebook page. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to read you the quote directly from Governor Kelly Ayotte's Facebook page. This is what she wrote while providing the link to the Union Leader story. It's time for drug dealers from Lowell and Lawrence to be afraid of trafficking their poison into our state. New Hampshire law enforcement will find you, stop you, and lock you up. Mm-hmm. All right, last sentence again. New Hampshire, if you're dealing drugs, we're gonna find you, stop you, lock you up. Bravo, Kelly Ayotte.
Yeah.
The first sentence. Shades of 2016 Governor Paul LePage of Maine
Yep.
dumping on Lawrence and to some degree Lowell.
Yep.
Why do these northern New England governors feel the need to dump? Like, you don't realize that, your communities have the drug. Like, have you been to Manchester?
Yeah.
Have you seen? You've seen photos of Manchester.
Yeah.
I got news for you, Kelly Ayotte. You might want Manchester to look more like Lowell and have the kind of economic opportunity that's coming into Lowell over the next handful of years. You should be embarrassed about what the streets of Manchester look like.
Correct.
Okay. But this notion that the drugs are coming from Lowell and Lawrence.
Yeah.
Well, so should the Lowell and Lawrence city managers and mayors be dumping on New York and then be dumping on the border, like San Diego or Amarillo, Texas?
The pipeline doesn't begin at Lowell or Lawrence. And I have to say, in full disclosure, I was born in Lawrence. My family is from Lawrence, so I am equally as offended on their behalf. I mean, they haven't.
Oh, Lawrence gets shit on all the time.
Right. They haven't done as great of a job as Lowell in kind of rehabbing and becoming such a great hub for positive things, not for what she's trying to say it's a hub for. But the reality is it's ignorant to say that Lowell and Lawrence are where this problem begins. And to even say that it's where this problem kind of stems from. If you look at the pipeline, the pipeline doesn't begin in Lowell. The pipeline doesn't begin in Lawrence. And it doesn't necessarily even end in New Hampshire.
You took the words right out of my mouth because, I'm going to guess there might be a mayor or a governor in Vermont that says, hey, Manchester, stop sending your, because they're living there. It's big cities, gateway cities. That's where this type of trade plies itself. So for her to just kind of assume that, we're manufacturing it here in Lowell or Lawrence and shipping it up to them. Yeah. No. We weren't doing that to Maine and Governor LePage. Go tackle the issue. Trust me, drug abuse and addiction is a very near and dear issue to me. I applaud anyone who challenges it, and I believe we need to fight it at the supply level as much. I think we kind of went away from that a little bit. That said, you don't have to shit on Lowell. You don't have to shit on New York. You don't have to shit on whatever. It's a countrywide problem.
It's just beyond. It's not even just the country. It's international problem. It's an international problem. We just handle it differently. But I think and this is what got me so upset with the Tewksbury Select Board meeting in December when they were kind of going after the state hospital. You have the opportunity when you're identifying a crisis, right? And I would say that the drugs are a crisis. Fentanyl is a crisis, right? When you're identifying that, instead of saying, let's try to do a blame game and I'm going to look like a toughie and I'm going to isolate myself from, why wouldn't you try to create an alliance? You know what I mean? And that's what I don't understand, because law enforcement does it to some extent. When they see that there's an issue in another town that might be affecting their town, you have a choice. You can either shit on that town and say, this is your problem. Where are we going to create borders? Is there now going to be a wall between Massachusetts and New Hampshire? Or you can be a professional, responsible person and say, hey, listen, we both have this problem. Let's join forces and figure out how we're going to tackle it together.
Get the police chiefs together to create a database of people who have listed their home addresses as Lowell or Manchester or Nashua or Concord. Share this information. Work together.
Yeah, no, this
pisses me off.
Right. And this is a great example of a bad idea, because she's now basically alienated herself. If there becomes a time where Lowell, she needs to come and say, hey, listen, Lowell, we have this problem. We need your help. If I'm Lowell, I'm like, screw you. Remember when we were the problem? We're doing great. Good luck cleaning up your mess.
Stay tuned. Inside Lowell is going to have a story about Governor Ayotte, and I believe the mayor of Lowell is actually crafting a response.
Good.
He was not happy
understandably
when I reached out to him earlier this morning, and he shouldn't be. And I remember, I haven't reached out to the city manager yet, but I remember when he was a state rep, he was in 2016, he was very upset about Governor Paul LePage's commentary from Maine. So Kelly Ayotte, you got to be better than that. And I kind of liked you. I was glad you won, but You gotta
just come and have a
be
tour.
better.
Don't,
Don't blame somebody else for your
just
issues.
stop. We all need to stop with the stereotypes. Just come down and learn. If you come to Lowell and you do a tour of Lowell and you somehow identify that Lowell is your problem in New Hampshire, great. Let the mayor know that. But until you've done that due diligence, shut up about our town. Shut up about our city.
See that you put the Lowell high number 35
I didn't even know.
Your Lowell anger comes up. All right, Jomarie Buckley, this was fun. We've got to do this more often.
Yes.
We got to get you on this side of the microphone.
All right.
More often too, but a lot of good stuff there. Tewksbury 2 select board seats.
Yes.
Open, 3 candidates already.
Yes.
More maybe coming. A lot of change happening in that town. Excited to have you here on our Inside Lowell team
Thanks,
to talk
Teddy.
about it all. Excited that you folks joined us as well. Another week of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse is in the bank. Fun week indeed. Lowell City Manager Tom Golden, State Auditor Diana 𝐷𝐸𝐴𝐸𝐞. We ticked off Lowell School Superintendent Liam Skinner to the point where he had to join us this morning. Jomarie, not afraid to hold back your rival Diana 𝐷𝐸𝐴𝐸𝐞 for making friends and influencing people. Sarcastically there. Next week, speaking of making friends and influencing people, on Monday, it's Inauguration Day. You might want to block your ears here for a second, Jomarie. But Mary Burns is going to be joining us from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., giving us a little sight and sound and flavor of Inauguration Day on Monday. Greg Pappas will be in studio with me. Mary Burns will be in D.C. on the Zoom line, so we'll talk to her. On Tuesday, we've got Joe Reddy, our insider from the town of Chelmsford. He'll be joining us. So speaking of selectmen who are calling it quits, George Dixon, longtime figure in Chelmsford, has called it a career. What's on tap for Chelmsford and the rest of the communities? We'll talk to Joe Reddy on Tuesday. We got our friend Real Estate Ray Booten on Thursday. We've got the Pod Squad on Friday, working on the Lowell City Council for Wednesday. Another full week of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse. Thank you for joining us. Till then, everybody stay safe and please stay warm.